Hello, hello. What's up, Eric? How you doing? Hopefully you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Awesome. You have a good Christmas?
It was good.
Good. Good New Year's?
Yeah.
Good. I want to start off by letting everyone know I apologize for taking such a hiatus. My girlfriend was back in town from Australia. We finally got her back over here into the States. She was here from the 21st to she just left yesterday. So I took that time off to be with her and some family. And, just wanted to enjoy that. It had been a while. So we all know what's going on in Australia with the COVID BS over there. So it's been a hell of a ride from the time she left to go back over there to the time she's come back. So, we're back. We're going to start this back up regularly. Also was having some issues with my Wi-Fi. Had a tech here today and got that fixed. But the other thing, and for those of you that are on Facebook watching this stream, I have been posting articles. And Eric, I don't know if you've seen them, but thefederalreport.com, that is my website. I write the articles on there. Go check them out. I think they're pretty good. It's giving you an analysis of all the current events, all the political events. For everything from it doesn't matter. I don't filter out topics that I write on. It's going to give you a kind of off the chart analysis. I think I like to go in a little deeper than maybe some of these other news sites like a Fox News or someone like that. The difference is I don't care what I report about. It's not breaking news. I'm just giving analysis. So I have not stopped writing those articles. I wrote those articles over Christmas, even when I was away from the podcast. And what I have found, first of all, I'm addicted. I love it. It's awesome. The other thing is it's going to take this podcast to a whole nother level. Because the amount of research and information that goes into writing one of these articles is just beyond me. I have a newfound respect to writers. But I got a lot of good things to talk about. And we're going to expose, at least, I say we're going to expose some people. The people have already exposed themselves. And we know this. I'm not saying we're going to go start putting people in jail, but my goal is to give people an understanding of what's going on, and not just an understanding. I want to give them a good understanding. I want to be able to narrow it down for people, because what I have found is that a lot of this stuff that goes on in the government is way over people's heads. It's way over my head, a lot of it. It takes a lot of time to sit down and understand their processes, and understand how things work, and just, I just want to be able to put it in a light that the common person can just grasp what's going on in our country. So the one thing that has been reported on extensively, when I say extensively, I mean a lot of people are talking about it, but they're not really going into much depth on it. And that is the Nancy Pelosi insider trading. Now, I have been on top of this for the last month, Eric. I have put so much time. Honestly, I think I'm actually going to write a book and post it on Amazon that feeds off of the articles I've written and the podcast I'm going to do on this subject. When I say there is so much that is behind the Nancy Pelosi insider trading, it's ridiculous. I myself, to give everyone a background, work in wealth management. I have my securities license. Trading in the market is a huge part of my life. Not only trading in the market, but trading options in the market is a major part of my life. I have extensive knowledge when it comes to options and stocks and bonds and all that stuff. I do this for a living. So I just want to have a disclosure out there. Now, what I want to kind of lay down as far as an understanding here, to know how big this problem is, you need to know what insider trading is. And all insider trading is someone trading based off of information that is not available to the public. And that information needs to come from an inside source, basically. Not everyone in the market is created equal, and not all information is just readily available. It's harder to get some insight or certain insight than it is other. Like, you may be able to go and pay for certain information and get more from let's say a Bloomberg subscription or something, or something like that, than you would like on Yahoo Finance. So no, I'm not going to say that all information is just out there, but there is a way to get it. It is public. Okay, they're not holding it. The information that makes it an inside trade is stuff that like a CEO may know or a board member may know. That's the stuff that makes it wrong, because no one else knows what is happening with that. The officers at a company or someone related to them, whatever it may be, they have this information and they are not supposed to release it. It could be something along the lines of a new contract with the government. It could be something along the lines of a merger in the company. It could be something maybe along the lines of a bankruptcy, and they're not ready to come out and tell everyone what's going on. So, what the insider trading laws are trying to do is it's just trying to make everything a fair playing field. Because if you didn't have the insider trading laws, then you would literally have these people on Wall Street, or these politicians, or these people at these big publicly traded companies making trades and just getting so stupid rich and screwing everyone else. Me as let's say I'm sitting at home and I'm a regular retail trader and I'm day trading. It's not fair for someone who may have access to a CEO, whatever kind of relationship they have, and we're trading the same stock, and you know something that's going to go on, so you're going to take the opposite side of the trade of me. And I have no idea. I have no way to go in and actually tell. I am all for free market. Okay? Like I said, I work in the stock market. I am 100% capitalist through and through. But again, there are certain things the government does need to regulate. And the insider trading one I believe is one of them. This is not a partisan problem either. This goes both ways. This is Republicans and Democrats do the same shit. And then people want to say, "Oh, well, they're shielded from the law." But I think it was the Stock Act or something like that. Something, I don't even know what the act was called, but I read it. Basically, It's not, they're somewhat protected from insider trading because they're not making the trades themselves. They're going to like a broker or someone else and they're placing the trades for them. Whoop-de-fucking-do. So what? I got a client that has inside information. He calls me up as his broker and says, hey, I need you to do this, make this trade. Okay. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm shielded because I don't know what information he has, but he's still making an illegal trade based off of insider information. The other part of this insider information is not just people that are working for the companies, not just officers. It's the politicians. What better way to make money in the stock market than to know all the upcoming legislation that's going to impact the stocks that you're trading in? And that's what the Pelosi's are doing. Now, the one that has been reported on, I don't understand it. Google, they picked the Google trade out. Now, what Paul Pelosi is doing, again, I want to dumb this down. He's not just buying stock. Paul Pelosi is buying options. An option, for those of you that don't know, it's a contract on 100 shares of a stock. So if he's buying a call option on Google, that means that he's buying a contract for 100 shares of Google stock. He's going to pick the price that in the contract. So you have a couple things. Let me explain what an option is more technically. It's a contract on 100 shares. You have two different types of options. You have a put, you have a call. If you buy a call option, you think the stock is going to go up. You're bullish. If you buy a put option, you think the stock is going to go down. A call option gives you the right, but not the obligation, to buy 100 shares of a certain underlying stock at a specific date in the future. Just like any other contract, right? It has an end date, an expiration date. So let's say Google's trading at $1,000 a share, and I think it's going to go up in the next 6 months to $1,500 a share. I would buy a call option for, let's say I buy for $1,500 a share. If it goes up past the $1,500, like let's say it goes to $1,600 a share, then when that option expires in 6 months, I get to purchase 100 shares at $1,500. And my gains is anything, if it's at $1,600 a share, then I have $100 a share worth of gains on $100 worth of stock. It's $10,000 in gains. The reason you buy options is because it's the safest way to leverage. So remember that. You buy options. The majority of people are buying options because if you bought 100 shares of Google, let's say, at $2,000 a share, that'd be $200,000 you have to put up front to buy 100 shares. $200,000, almost $250,000 to purchase 100 shares if it's trading at $2,000 a share. You buy an option at the $2,000 strike price instead, expiring in a year. That option may be worth $50,000. Not even. I'd say it's probably worth around $30,000. It's usually worth probably 10 to 20% of whatever you would actually have to pay. So what you're doing is you're taking, you're going to use 10 to 20% of the risk, but you still get the gains of owning 100 shares of the stock. So you're leveraging. If it doesn't go to the price that you choose and the contract expires worthless, you only lose the money that you paid for the option. It expires worthless, then so you would, instead of putting in $200,000 and Google takes a 50% dive in a year and you lose $100,000, you buy the option, you pay, $20,000 or $30,000. If it takes a 50% dive, you only lose the $20,000 or $30,000, so you're still ahead. You just mitigated your risk, but you still get the leverage on the upside. Cool Cat on Facebook, you're renting someone else's shares. No, you're not. It's different. It's the shares haven't been exchanged. There's no renting with the option. So when you're talking about renting, Cool Cat, I think you're actually talking about shorting shares, which is a whole other side of this. And that's where you're selling shares that you don't own. So you're selling someone else's shares, and you have to buy those shares back. That's where you're getting at with the renting the shares. The options are different. Now, if you're buying put options, right, eventually you'll get to that point, because a put option is you have the right to sell. But that's a whole different conversation. Pelosi's doing call options. I'm not trying to overwhelm people here. He's buying these call options. Now, I just want to say that it's not a stupid investment to do this, right? But it is leveraging. And when I see an article in USA Today fact-checking, his insider trading allegations, and the article is fact-checking, it says, talking about Tesla, it said that it was a false claim that Pelosi had purchased all these shares in Tesla stock. In fact, all he did was buy options. I'm like, that's fucking worse, because he's leveraging it. So every move that he does, he's not just saying, okay, I want to buy a few shares and put in all the risk. He's saying, I'm just going to actually leverage it. If it works out, great. If not, it's a smart way to do it, yes, but I'm just saying that he's making more money doing it the way he's doing than if he, as far as risk to reward wise, than if he just bought the shares. What you need to look at, and I explained this in the article I wrote on the Federal Report, the first thing I looked at, went back all the way back to 2013 on the financial disclosures, which you can find on the House Clerk website for the House of Representatives. You go back, you see all the financial disclosures. I went through all of his holdings. Found out a lot of things. They have a $5 to $25 million mortgage, by the way, on a house. Actually, they have a couple of them. Just to let you know on what kind of mortgage they're paying. They have about, a couple bank accounts with a few $1,000s and one with more than that. They have everything on there. It's pretty interesting. Here's what I noticed. Or let me go back. Here's what I checked for at first. The first thing I checked for was consistency. If you're trading in companies you like, if he's using options, one thing Pelosi showed from 2013 to about 2017-ish was consistency in his trades. He would trade in the same companies, Apple and Facebook and a few others, consistently. He had some holdings like AT&T or Comcast that paid good dividends. And he was very consistent. The other thing is I think he exercised the options, which means if you exercise the option, that means you, instead of just selling the option and closing out and taking your profit, you actually double down and you actually invest in those shares and buy those shares that you had the contract on. That doesn't happen often, but it does. But he actually will exercise them sometimes and purchase the shares from the contract that he had. Usually he did it on Facebook. But here's the first thing that caught my eye. On his Facebook trades, he's exercising the shares from the call options he buys on Facebook. And to get around taxes, because they live in California, and Trump limited the state and local tax in those states, he is transferring the shares, the unrealized gains, into the Pelosi Foundation, which is a 501c3. So a nonprofit that has a 501c3 has the tax exemption for the nonprofit. Now, how the hell the Pelosi Foundation is a 501c3 when you look at what they do, is beyond me. Last year, or the year before, he transferred just under $4 million in newly acquired Facebook shares. Again, when I say newly acquired, when we're talking about options, when you exercise an option, you have to pay the taxes on the gains from the option at that point, even though you're buying the shares. That's what Elon Musk ran into this year and why he's had to sell so many shares to pay all the taxes, because he had a bunch of stock options. I'm pretty sure. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I'm not a tax professional. But he's going to transfer those shares. He transferred just under $4 million in shares to the Pelosi Foundation. I want to say 2019. That same year, the Pelosi Foundation only donated $130,000 to charity. That leaves him with almost $4 million invested in the Pelosi Foundation that is growing tax-free because it's in the foundation. It's got a 501c3. Now, they didn't pay themselves out of that foundation, but they only donated $130,000. I want to say around $100,000 of it. The majority went to Nancy Pelosi's college that she went to. Trinity, I believe it was. $130,000 after transferring $4 million worth of shares. All this is public, by the way. Now, this isn't a stupid thing. And Cool Guy, I kind of, this is going to get a little bit out of my range of financial knowledge, but I'll go into why he may be doing this. But now you understand, they live in California or DC, wherever they're living, they have a state tax. Remember, in the Trump tax cuts, he limited the SALT tax that they could deduct on their federal income taxes. And we're going to go into more than that later in the episode too. Your SALT tax, your state and local tax. One way around it is when he transfers those shares over, those $4 million worth of shares, he can deduct the full amount, basically, from his taxes. Because it's like a gift at that point, or it's like you're donating to charity, right? So it's a way around getting, being capped on your state and local taxes there. Help them. And what he's doing, that's not illegal, the charity and stuff like that. That's smart. So I'm not going to criticize anyone for being financially smart and doing things that are legal. Right? I mean, that is what it is. If that's the tax code, then hey, you do it, dude. So I'm not saying that's illegal. I'm just saying it's sketchy because I don't like the fact that we can have a nonprofit organization that is donating to like the Art Institute of San Francisco that's worth $50 million already, or a college that costs people $50,000 to $60,000 a year to attend. They're not hurting for money. He's not donating to the Starving Children of Africa Fund here. He's donating to the Kennedy Library or the Art Institute in San Francisco or Cal Berkeley out of their Pelosi Foundation. But they get their tax exemption and they're transferring the shares. Now, why I think he's doing that is that there is something about, I think, when they pass on and their kids take over that charity, there's something with that tax-wise, because I remember doing a training about and looking into like the Clinton Foundation and why they do certain things. It's a whole way around the taxes using these charities. But if you go back in time and you look at the money that the Pelosi Foundation has donated, they don't donate to anything that is not well off already, for one. And they don't donate hardly any money. But they're transferring a lot of money into that nonprofit. Now back to Pelosi's trading. Paul Pelosi's trades. The first thing I noticed is that in 2017, when Trump's first year fully in office, he starts doing a lot more trading in the stock market. He didn't have a lot of trades that he did prior to that. He just had like the Apple, the Facebook trade, and then some other holdings. He started doing a lot more trading in the market when Trump went into office. That's funny to me because they always criticize Donald Trump's economy. But damn it, they didn't profit from it. The other thing is in 2019 is when he starts adding some new big companies. That's when he first does an Amazon trade. That's when he first does a Google trade, I believe. Again, the Google trade I don't think is that bad. What is bad is literally the day before the market falls out. Like the freaking Friday before, he buys his first call option expiring in 1 year. So it was like February 20th of 2020. He buys not just, and he's buying substantial amounts of options, by the way. Millions. Way more. He started investing way more than he ever did in the stock market right before the market fell out. And the timing of it is sketchy. Again, he did it when the market was at its high. It started kind of going down a little bit, the 4 days prior. But that Friday, he buys those options. Then Monday, the market tanks and continues to tank until, into March. While it's tanking, he is constantly buying up more and more Microsoft call options. He also did the same thing with, what was the other company? I can't remember the name. But he did the same thing. I have it in my notes. He did the same thing with another company that was competing for contracts with Microsoft regarding streaming. Stuff like Zoom calls and stuff like that, right? Because Microsoft has was it Microsoft Teams? This other company also had the same thing. They were competing for contracts. Both of these did extremely well during COVID. Now, people are going to say, well, he bought it right before the market dropped. He bought it at a high, which means he would have been at a really big loss when the market tanked. So all he was doing was averaging his costs down and buying more shares and buying the dip, right? I don't see it as that. Because Microsoft has been one of the best investments over time throughout history. Like, it's history, at least. Except for in the early 2000s. Microsoft has been a very safe investment. So has Google, for the most part, and Amazon. Kind of Amazon, but they're very good investments. Some of the largest companies in the world. Why do you choose right then to start buying the call options? The other thing is like I said, he allocated significant amounts of money, more money than he did prior to COVID, into the equity markets right before it crashed. My opinion is that they knew there was going to be market fallout from COVID. And they knew what companies were going to benefit from COVID. They said, we can make this trade now before the market really starts to fall out. And we will be down, but we're not going to sell, obviously. He's a very good investor, smart, savvy investor. He knows what he's doing. He's not going to just cringe when he loses 50% on an option. It's going to look like, because we were down 50% at one point, it's going to look like we were at the mercy, like everyone else was, of the market dropping. No. See, it's different when I go in and I blindly, and I don't know what the Congress is talking about, or I don't know anything about what's going to happen with COVID in February of 2020 as an investor, and I'm just buying options thinking the market's going to continue on its path, as opposed to someone like Pelosi, whose wife is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And they had meetings regarding what will happen to the economy with COVID. And that's when he starts buying the options. The other thing is the expiration date on the Microsoft options was let me turn to my page, but I believe it was March 14th. A couple days later, so on March 14th, those options expire. He doesn't sell the options for a substantial amount of profit that he already made, like the majority of people would do. He exercised the options, which means he actually went back and invested the rest of the money needed to acquire those shares at the price that he chose, which was, a few $1,000,000 more he had to put into that investment. A couple days later, Microsoft secures a massive contract with the military and goes up, and it's trading over $300, $330 a share as of now. And he still owns those shares. So that's the first sketchy one. The second one that I just cannot believe is not being investigated is Tesla. So going back, what is it? Around 2016, 17, 18, somewhere? Tesla exploded. We all remember this. It was like crazy. It went from like $50 to $600 or something crazy like that. It exploded. And ever since then, Tesla has just, the stock price has just skyrocketed. You're telling me that all of the benefits that could have come from investing in Tesla, 3 years ago, even after it had initially made its move upwards, you still didn't invest. Even through the pandemic, when the stock price, cut in half or 60%, you still didn't invest. Even when Tesla, in August of 2020, or July of 2020, really, during earnings, announced that they were going to do a, 5-to-1 stock split, 4-to-1 stock split, and the price of Tesla skyrocketed again, you still didn't decide to invest. It wasn't until December of 2020, after Donald Trump lost the election and Joe Biden was about to be sworn in, that you decided to buy call options and leverage a trade in Tesla. Less than a month later, Joe Biden is sworn into office. And his first day on the job, what's he do? He signs an executive order that's going to focus on the environment and climate change and the EV market. And also one that's going to replace 650,000 federal vehicles with EV vehicles. Who is leading the market share with electric vehicles? I think we can all agree Tesla. Elon Musk has perfected that product. Tesla has signed multiple deals with Hertz and stuff like that to add a fleet of electric vehicles. How in the hell are people not looking at this? Guys, I've seen people say, "Well, he's just investing in blue chip stocks like everyone else was doing during the pandemic." It's not the investment, it's the intent. It's not what you invest in, it's why you invested in it. The average person like you or I, or someone that does a lot of research maybe, will go and read the 10K, do all your due diligence, look at their financial statements, read the news, see what they have going on. Maybe there's something in the future, right? Whatever it may be. We will use public knowledge, and we will base our investment decisions off of that. What we don't have access to is the conversations going on with the Biden administration after they win the election. We don't have access to that. We don't have access to what the Biden administration is planning on doing day one. Yeah, they talk a lot and they say, we're going to get this done, this done, this done. On day one, we're going to sign all these orders. Yeah, fine. But you still don't know the exact writing of that and what all that all entails until he does it. Especially with the Biden administration, because he doesn't ever fucking talk. If it was Trump, maybe it's a little different because, hell, he tweets it all. But not with this administration. Again, how do you not invest in Microsoft until last year? And it just so happened to expire a couple days before they secured that contract, and you didn't just, like you did most other options, just close them out. No, you exercised them. You bought the shares, which means you're willing to put in that extra bit of money to buy those actual underlying shares and own them, knowing that stock was going to go up, knowing they were going to secure that contract. It's crazy. It's outright insane. Here's the other thing. Pelosi also, in 2020, for the first time, got involved with an LLC. It's a real estate company. Again, in about February or so in 2020. What does that company do? They buy up several Marriott hotels at the bottom end of the market in 2020 during COVID. We all know what happened with the hotel industry when we had the COVID shutdowns. It went to shit. So you're buying up Marriott hotels knowing that it's going to come back and people are going to start staying at Marriott's again. And that was actually done after the market had fallen out. He reallocated out of stocks that are paying him dividends, and he put more money into investments, tech investments. Now, this guy's like 80-something years old, for one. Like, come on. How risky are you going to be? But, you know, he wasn't going investing in, like, John Deere, right? These are tech investments that are, you know, securing these contracts. The Google one, the big thing was the antitrust laws. You know, they got through that whole deal. Again, I'm not going to hammer him on the Google trade. It's already well reported on. The other ones were really sketchy to me. But the one thing that hasn't been reported on that's bothering me is where they're making these connections at. This is a theory of mine, but it seems very feasible. And that theory is the Kennedy Center. It all starts at the Kennedy Center. Yeah, you know, some of these politicians, they know the CEOs. When you go and you look at the Kennedy Center, first of all, for those of you that don't know what the Kennedy Center is like a opera house or some bullshit like that in Washington, D.C. It was started to, you know, in honor of John F. Kennedy. And it's supposed to be privately funded, not publicly funded. It's not a government deal. It's supposed to be privately funded from donors. But here's the board of the board members of the Kennedy Center. You have honorary board members, which is usually the first ladies or ex-first ladies of the United States. So like Melania Trump, Michelle Obama, all them. Whatever, that's fine. Then you have people like, you know, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and all them. They're like basically honorary board members. So they have a part, but they go to all these events for the Kennedy Center. The top donors to the Kennedy Center, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, Alliance Bernstein family members, Marriott family members. You have, there are several others. All of them in the companies. Let me go back. There was only like one or two holdings that Pelosi had that were trading on the stock market that weren't donors to the Kennedy Center. And the one that I know of off the top of my head that wasn't a donor to the Kennedy Center was Tesla. They didn't donate any money to the Kennedy Center. You know who does donate money to the Kennedy Center? Ford and General Motors. If you saw recently, Elon Musk talked to in an interview, said that he wasn't invited to the White House Summit for electric vehicles. They invited Ford and GM, but they didn't invite the industry leader, Tesla. And Elon Musk was pissed off at Joe Biden about it. It's like, how are you not going to invite the company that literally has perfected the technology? Well, he doesn't donate to the Kennedy Center for one, but the other two do. When you draw it back to the Kennedy Center, it all comes together. Like I said, Pelosi acquired substantial amounts of Alliance Bernstein stock into early 2020 for the first time ever. There's 4 members of the Bernstein family that are donors to the Kennedy Center. Marriott's are donors to the Kennedy Center. These big corporations are donors to the Kennedy Center. Here's the other thing. When you look at the people that donate to Nancy Pelosi's campaigns, the upcoming one, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, all of them are all in the top 20 donors to her campaign. Now, if that's not some pay-to-play shit, I don't know what is. if you donate to the Kennedy Center, you get access to these exclusive events that they go to, and the politicians also attend them. Why do I know that? Well, just off the top of my head, I have a picture in the article I wrote of her and her husband literally at a Kennedy Center event. Who in their right mind is stupid enough to believe that if you have a... Let me stop there and say this real quick. A large corporation needs a relationship with politicians because they need to make sure that they're implementing legislation that's in the benefit of their business. A politician absolutely 100% needs the owner of those big corporations. They need the money. They have to have the money from those politicians, or not from the corporations. If they don't, they're not going to get elected. So you're telling me going back to what I was saying, in a room at an event, something like the Met Gala or a Kennedy Center event, you're going to literally tell me that these big CEOs that need the politicians on their side and these politicians that need money from the CEOs aren't going to sit down and talk about how they can scratch each other's backs. That'd be the most naive statement you could... I mean, that'd be so stupid to believe that. Dane says, welcome to America, Mike. I know that... Dane, I've known this, okay? I've just been writing about it, but a lot of people don't, like... They know there's corruption, but they don't know where it kind of comes from or how it's done. Oh, no, Dan, we've been doing this. This is my 50th episode. But, if you really think, Republican or Democrat, if you're in a room with the people that you need freaking money from to get reelected and keep your livelihood going, and the people that you need the money from need your help with certain legislation ideas, that's a good discussion, right? Think about this. Going back to Joe Biden's Build Back Better deal. I wrote an article about this. It was going to be a major tax cut for the rich. A major tax cut for the rich. He lied to everyone. Oh, we're going to build from the bottom up and the middle out. We're going to cut taxes on the lower middle class, and we're going to tax the rich. Bullshit. Instead, the only tax cut he was providing to the lower middle class are the ones that had children, and that was through the child tax credit. The problem with the child tax credit is Biden changed. So let me give you some history. Trump implemented the child tax credit, or he expanded on it in his tax legislation. However, you had to pay taxes to be able to get a credit. So if you owed, $5,000 in taxes and then you got a $2,000 child tax credit, then you only owed $3,000 in taxes. If you owed $0 in taxes, you didn't get the $2,000 child tax credit because you didn't pay anything in. Why do you need a cut on your taxes, right? What Biden did was he allowed people that were not paying anything in taxes to still get the credit. Now we're at a redistribution of wealth. Because because he also increased the amount you can get in the tax credit. Let's say now it's $3,000 per child, and you paid zero in taxes. Now the government's giving you $3,000, even though you didn't pay anything. So he allowed you to have access to that tax credit. What's up, Mr. A? What's going on, man? He allowed you to have access to that tax credit even if you don't pay any taxes, so he's redistributing wealth. What does that do? That increases the cost on everyone that is paying taxes. And he said the Build Back Better plan was not going to add to the deficit. He said it's paid for. The problem with that statement is that if he extends the child tax credit, which I believe it just expired, or they're trying to extend it maybe even a year. If they extend the child tax credit indefinitely, like he was trying to do, it was going to cost around, it was over $1 trillion. The bill itself was only for like 1.75 trillion. So that means that it would actually add crazy amounts of money to the deficit. So he has to be careful with expanding that tax credit. That's the only tax break that he gave the lower middle class in the Build Back Better plan. That's the only one. And that one already expired, I believe, as of the new year. They're trying to get it extended. So if they pass the Build Back Better plan now and they don't extend the child tax credit, there's no tax cut for the lower middle class. But there is a tax cut for the rich in the form of the SALT tax, the state and local taxes. They're going to raise that from $10,000 set under the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to $80,000. The states that pay the highest state and local tax are California, New York, Washington, D.C., all the blue states. Red states tend to not have hardly any state income tax, or they have very low ones. Basically, what the Democrats have been doing is they're saying, we're going to raise taxes on the federal part, but you can deduct more on the state and local income taxes if you're wealthy, because you have to be wealthy to have $80,000 worth of state and local taxes anyway. By the way, that's like your property taxes and all that, right? So if you own a mansion, you probably have $80,000 in property taxes. But someone who's living in, a middle class home that's worth $200,000 does not have $80,000. When I went back and I analyzed the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I actually found that he screwed the rich. He did not give tax cuts to the rich. He gave some tax cuts to corporations. Yes, that's fine. He did not give tax cuts to the rich, though, in the form of federal and state income taxes. Not even close. He actually, and I showed this before, he did give direct tax cuts to the lower middle class because he cut their tax rates at the bottom brackets. He increased the standard deduction, and he put in the child tax credits. Everyone that wasn't affluent got tax cuts. If you lived in a blue state under Trump and you're a wealthy person, you got screwed. Because before the Trump tax cuts, the majority of people that, in like the $500,000 range or more a year in income were actually itemizing their deductions. Or actually, the majority of people that were just, $50,000 a year or more were itemizing their deductions. Now you just take the standard deduction of $12,500 or whatever it is now. And you just deduct that because most people throughout the year don't have enough expenses to be able to go back and keep track of the receipts and itemize it and it be worth anything. Usually the standard deduction is more than what that would be. So, but for the wealthy, it's not. The Build Back Better deal was going to increase the state and local tax in these blue states to $80,000 from $10,000. And that's a tax that only the rich can take advantage of. No one else, everyone else will get the deduction, but again, they're not changing that standard deduction, and they're not changing tax brackets, so everyone else would continue to pay the same as they are now. Except for the wealthy. They would pay less. We're going to hold this up and distract you over here with this child tax credit. We're going to reduce child poverty and all that stuff that they pitch. But what most people don't know is this actually expires in a year. That was because the child tax credit, the way that Biden did it, the way he expanded on Trump's tax credit like that, was actually done in the COVID package that Biden passed in March, whatever it was, when we got our $1,400 checks. So it wasn't even a part of the Build Back Better deal. The Build Back Better deal is just trying to expand it. If he expands it, it's going to add a significant amount to the deficit, and then he lied. He can't, if he doesn't want to appear as a big liar and cost the government a lot of money and wants to show that it's paid for, he can't extend that tax credit. He just can't. His hands are tied. So what he's banking on is people not paying attention to it. And here's the other thing. You have to have a kid below a certain age to even get that tax credit. The other problem is that tax credit is not just for American citizens. If your son or daughter has a social, but you don't, you're an illegal, you can still get that tax credit. They don't need the parent's social for this. So it's a way that they were able to compensate a lot of the people that they're bringing in from the southern border. We'll go into that in another episode. But nothing Biden has done has been of a benefit for the lower middle class. Not one thing. I've said this many times. You cannot build from the bottom up and the middle out. And you can't. You can only build from the bottom out. Or you build from you have to just keep it as it is. You cannot build from the bottom up and the middle out and because to make everyone even and equal, you have to bring the top people all the way down to the bottom and make everyone broke. Like they do in North Korea or communist Soviet Union, any communist country. Cool Cat asks, how does an illegal get a tax credit? So the way it works is normally you would have to show you have to provide your social, right? You're not getting the tax credit for you though, Cool Cat. You're getting it for your child. And so you have, let's say, illegals that maybe had a kid born here or a kid in DACA or something like that where they have a social or a tax ID. And they just give them the kids social and stuff, and the parents get the money. So they basically have it's getting technical. I'll have to go into it in another episode to really explain it. But that yes, these illegals that were coming up here were able to get that tax credit. Now, that brings me to the next talking point, and I wrote about this yesterday, yesterday and last week. These vaccine mandates, on top of the infrastructure deal and the Build Back Better deal that wasn't passed, thank God, that Biden was proposing, the vaccine mandates are extremely racist. By the definition of the left and what they consider racist, the vaccine mandates are probably the worst as far as what we've seen politically. And they don't even acknowledge it. And the right doesn't even acknowledge it. I don't know. I actually sent an email to Scott Desjardins, who's my local rep, yesterday. I sent him an article I wrote and the analysis I did. And I said, why is no one on the right paying attention to this? Why aren't they hitting the Biden administration on this aspect of the fallout from that could occur with these vaccine mandates? And what that fallout is it's a disproportionately negative impact on the minority labor force. And more specifically, the black labor force. So to go back and recap, the vaccine mandates state, his original ones, that all the federal employees or executive branch employees had to be vaccinated. If you wanted to contract with the federal government, you had to be vaccinated. And then if you are a business that has 100 or more employees, the employees needed to be vaccinated or get tested weekly and show a negative test. The black population makes up 10% of the United States labor force. 10%. Yet, it makes up 18.5% roughly of federal executive branch employees. Civilian employees, not counting the military. 18.5%. The black population is disproportionately represented in the federal workforce. Think about that. 18%. There's 4 million executive civilian employees. 18.5% of that is black, plus other minority groups. I'm picking them out because of how much they're disproportionately represented compared to everyone else. Because it's not just them that will be fired from the vaccine mandates, obviously, but that's roughly 250,000 workers potentially at risk of losing their job. Because if you look at the data, the state data that shows vaccine rates by race, the CDC has a different number than the actual state data. What the CDC says is that 72%, 73% of the entire United States is vaccinated. And it says that roughly 71% or so of the black population is vaccinated. However, the way the CDC gets their data is they're doing it through surveys. Apparently, the CDC feels that people will be more honest on a survey provided by the federal government about taking the vaccine than they will when they go to get the vaccine and write down their information with the local person giving them the vaccine, the shot as it is. I'd much rather... What, you're saying, oh, when I go to my CVS and get the shot, I don't want to tell them I'm black or white, but I'm willing to tell the federal government if I'm black or white on a random ass survey about the vaccine? Especially when when the federal government is mandating it? No. The state and local data as of December 13th showed that only 51% of the black population was vaccinated. That's about 20% difference than what the CDC says. 51% of the black population is vaccinated. Furthermore, the Hispanic vaccination rates are increasing. I can't remember where they were at in comparison to the white and the Asian vaccine rates. Asians had the highest vaccine rate by any of the races, like 80%. The CDC says that 95% of Asians are fully vaccinated. There's no way. It says that roughly 70-something% based off the state data of white people was vaccinated, but black people had the lowest vaccination rates, and we've known this. And they kind of have every right to feel the way they do about it. There's been a lot of sketchy things that they've been through, and I'm not saying, look, I'm vaccinated. I'm not telling you not to get it. I'm just going off the numbers. We've heard that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and we've also heard that it's all the Trump publicans and the conservatives that are not vaccinated. That's not true. It's not a partisan problem. Because Joe Biden secured a substantial majority of the black vote, but only 50% of the black population is vaccinated. So obviously, just going off the 90% of the, 85-90% of the black votes that Biden received, or allegedly received, so 40% or so of the people, the black people that aren't vaccinated voted for Joe Biden. And 40% of the people, and 10% of the people that are black that did get vaccinated voted for Trump. It's not only the right that isn't getting vaccinated. It has nothing to do with political ideology. What there is a correlation to is your age, your health, and your race. Obviously, race doesn't determine, you being vaccinated or not. When I say race, I mean just by statistics, if you're black, you're more likely to not have gotten vaccinated because only 51% of the black population was vaccinated. That's all I'm saying. It had nothing to do with political ideology. That's bullshit that Fox News and CNN and all of them are feeding us. But what it will do, what the numbers really show, is that low-end employees, low-wage workers tend to be, I think I saw today, I looked at like 50-some% of them are white, and 25% are like Hispanic and black and then Asian. So when you look at the population percentages that each race makes up, disproportionately, low-wage workers tend to be minority. That's how it is. Who are they going to fire for not being vaccinated at a business? They're not going to fire the vice president of the company. They're going to fire the employee, the lower people, the teller at the bank. They're going to fire the warehouse worker. Why? Because it's harder to replace skilled labor, for one. The vice president would be far harder to replace. But the other thing is that in the Biden mandates, it states that the cost of a test, so the weekly test, because you have an option if you work for a private company, you can get vaccinated or show a weekly negative test. But the cost of that test to go to work does not have to be covered by the insurance companies. And it is not covered federally. So, when you go and you get your test like from CVS and you don't have insurance, you still get a free test, right? Because the government's kind of paying for a lot of this stuff, your vaccine, all that. If you're doing it as your weekly test to go back to work because you don't want to get vaccinated, they state, and this on the whitehouse.gov website, that the federal coverage requirements do not pertain to the return to work testing. That means it is up to the business to cover the cost. Here's what you run into with that. Businesses are not going to expose themselves to more liability. When you raise tax on a corporation, roughly 35% of that increased tax is passed through to the employers. It's passed through to the employers, the employees, sorry. It's passed through to the employees in the form of lower wages, or they get laid off, or whatever, reduced hours, whatever. The businesses that have an increased cost, be it taxes, whatever, want to maintain their margins, and they have the right to do so. They do that by paying people less. Do you really think that if the government forces higher taxes on something that the business has to pay, and they do it by penalizing the employees and paying them less, do you really think that they're going to cover the cost of a test that they have to now pay for because the employee's personal decision to not get vaccinated? You're out of your mind. What are they going to do to that employee? They're going to go to the employee and say, look, the average cost of a test is over $100. Which it is. I looked this up. It's over $100, between $100 and $150, depending on what test. The average cost of those tests are over $100, and you need one every week to test negative. That's over $5,200 a year per person that's not vaccinated. If you had, based off the statistics of 100 people, 100 employees, if only 72% of the United States is vaccinated, let's just make it simple. Let's say 25 employees aren't vaccinated. That's over $130,000 a year in extra expenses just to test people so they can come to work every week. Again, $100 a week to get tested. The vice president, he'll eat that. No problem. I don't want to get vaccinated. I'll pay that. Take it out of my paycheck. I'm making $100,000 a year, $150,000, $200,000 a year, $100 a week. Shit, that's chump change. But the guy making $15 an hour, $100 out of his check, I can't do that. But I'm not going to go get vaccinated. Well, you're fired. Again, it's not the executives. It's not the key employees. The highly compensated employees that are going to get screwed. It's the people that don't want to get vaccinated because they don't trust the government, or they don't trust the vaccine, or they have a religious reason, or whatever their reason is. It doesn't matter. You have the right to not get vaccinated if you don't want to, whatever that reason may be. if you don't want to, then you better find a job that will cover the cost of the test, because the businesses are going to pass it down on you. My brother's a prime example. Now, he makes good money, but the company came and told him and said, look, it's either vaccinated or you got to pay for the test, which was like $100 a week. That's literally what they did. That's where I'm getting this from. And I went and looked up the cost of those tests, and I put all this together. That's what they're doing. They're passing it down on the employees. The employees that can't cover it are gonna have to. They're gonna be forced to take the vaccine, or they're gonna be forced to leave. And Cool Cat, you're right. Okay, but if you get rid of your employees, she says, then who's gonna work? The problem is that in the beginning of these mandates, because you understand they really aren't enforced until this year, and it's under Supreme Court litigation right now. But in the beginning, the companies will just say, well, I'll just replace it with someone who was vaccinated. Maybe they replace it with illegal workers. You can find the people, possibly. And if they don't, then, obviously it's going to impact the business. So Biden double fucked everyone. Not only did he fuck over the employees, but he also screwed over the business as well, because they can't replace the employees that they want to have working there. It's not that the business doesn't want the employee working. It's that the business is being forced by the federal government to give the employee an ultimatum. Pay for testing out of your paycheck or go get vaccinated. What the government is hoping is that people will just say, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to go get vaccinated because it's obviously free, as opposed to paying for the testing. There's nothing the Biden administration has done, like I said in the beginning, that is benefiting the lower and middle class, other than the freaking tax credit he expanded on. Wasn't even his idea. He just expanded on it, redistributed wealth, and it's expiring anyway. The one that he can't even give an extension on without showing that he's a liar. He has extremely racial policies. And the reason I do not like using the "you're a racist" word. I do not like accusing anyone of being racist. I'm saying they're very racial policies and racist policies because of the disproportionate impact it's having on specific races. Again, it will impact everyone, but it's going to substantially impact employment rates among minority groups, specifically the black racial group. I would say, if everything held true, let's say that black people just weren't getting vaccinated because they truly felt that they just did not trust it, whatever the reason may be. Let's just say those vaccination rates among the black community slowly increase. Slowly, maybe to 60% in the next 3 months. Then you're going to put I would say the unemployment rate, which again, black people already have the highest unemployment rate among other races. I believe it's around 6%. It's double what the total unemployment is right now. Unemployment the other day was like 3.9%. Black unemployment was around 6.7, I think. So they already have the highest unemployment. You're going to put in a policy that will probably increase their unemployment by about 10 or 15%. I think you'll see black unemployment under the vaccine mandates, if they enforce them, going somewhere around 8 or 9%. Possibly 10%. I don't know, but I would imagine it's going to increase off of that. I hope it doesn't. I hope that they don't follow through with this. First of all, it's bullshit. Cool Cat got it right. It's not in the Constitution anywhere. Cool Cat says that it's impacting her because she's white and Native American, which is funny on the Native American one, Cool Cat, that you bring it up. It said that the CDC claims that they have, like 70% maybe a little under 70% vaccination. And I don't get that either, because the state data shows otherwise too. They were the second lowest vaccination rate behind the black community. But it's going to impact minorities more than it will white people, but it's going to impact everyone. It's going to impact all people. It just will. What they've done is he has pitched the idea that he's going to help minorities. He's going to, sorry about that. He's going to help the middle and lower class. Instead, he's turned these vaccine mandates into something that is actually classism. And he's separating the lower middle class and screwing them. He has not done anything, nothing, that in the long run will not negatively impact those communities. Not one thing. He hasn't lowered taxes for anyone yet. It's only, 10 months into his, it's been a year actually, January, into his presidency, but he has not done one thing. He's proposed a lot. They've talked a lot of shit, but actually the stuff that they propose is actually going to hurt it. The vaccine mandates, I just cannot get over why no one on the right or independents or whoever cannot see through what it is. I don't understand why people cannot see it for what it is. If you're talking about an ultimatum, you do this or you lose your job. High up people are not going to lose their job. He must think that they're just going to fire these executives and these directors of these companies and replace them with let's say minority workers or something, because that's like how they talk. Like, we're going to, it's going to equal everything out. No, they're not going to fire those people. It's hard to replace those people, for one. And two, they're just not. It was really frustrating. I'm addicted to writing the articles, but it is extremely frustrating that, like, just seeing it and breaking it down. And this is stuff that I've talked about before. Going back to the Pelosi insider trading and the Biden agenda, and these people have not been held accountable. I don't know, Eric, I know you've been quiet and I appreciate it. Figured I say thanks for reminding me on that countdown clock. I think we're good. I think we're only at an hour and 15 minutes roughly, maybe a little over that.
So you got about 45 minutes left in today's show.
Yeah, we got a little bit. But what are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on any of this?
You really do make a compelling case here. Like from earlier in the show when you talked about the Pelosi's and them allegedly engaging in some shady insider trading to, of course, what you're discussing now.
Yeah, I think the next few shows are definitely going to be just like this. Where it's the federalreport.com. That is my website. That's my writing. I write those articles. If you know anyone else that wants to contribute and write articles, I would be glad to have them on there. Get paid the advertising revenue.
I think a podcast show he used to be here on Podbean, but he does live streams over on YouTube. His name is Jeff Moore of the Trade More podcast on YouTube. If you're interested in seeing the kind of trading he does and the classes that he teaches, and I think John DeVito is going to have him on as a guest on John's show next Wednesday.
Now you just reminded me of something. When you talked about trading, going back to the Nancy Pelosi thing, I want to state all of their trades are public information. They have to fill out these financial disclosures, right? So you see everything that they're doing. The problem, though, is, and there's some websites like Wall Street Bets or all these things, They have people that are tracking the Pelosi trade. So you can actually trade the same stocks that the Pelosi's are. But
and
go
another
ahead.
thing, like what people may not realize about a lot of your elected officials is, it may not be just family members that engage in the trading for them. They usually have it set up to where it's all in a blind trust.
Yeah, well, so I want to finish this point real quick though before it goes too far. But
Go ahead.
going back to, look, people are saying, oh yeah, you can trade off of their portfolios and do the same thing. Yes, but the problem is that those disclosures are filed months later. They're not filed in real time. So by the time that you actually make the same trade that Pelosi made, the move probably already happened. It's a huge lag. So you're not actually, again, timing is a major aspect. Intent, right? It's not just what the company that you invest in, it's the timing and the intent of the investment. It's the basis of why you're doing it. If you're going to go and you're going to trade off of Nancy Pelosi's financial disclosures, because that's where these places are getting the information from. They're not just, getting it in real time, seeing him make these trades. No, they're getting off those disclosures filed with the clerk's office. You're months behind. He could have already done something else by that time that they hadn't disclosed yet. So I just wanted to make that clear, and then go ahead, Eric, with what you were saying.
And then, 2 months before, COVID really became a big news story, and this is 2 years ago this month, you had names like Dianne Feinstein and Kelly Loeffler,
Yep.
Being briefed behind, in a backroom deal behind closed doors.
And there's the guy in North Carolina.
Dianne, Richard Burr,
Yep.
He's retiring this year. And then Dianne Feinstein's husband, Richard Bloom, is somebody, to really keep an eye on, and because he does a lot of that shady trading, like Pelosi and his husband does. Yeah.
So, Cool Cat said it's 45 days to report, and it takes time for stocks to grow. It does take time, but in last year's market, it didn't take much time. It took a couple days or a week. Tesla, that trade and when Biden signed the order occurred in less than a month. So, volatility, right? In a very slow moving market, low volatility. Yes. Cool Cat, you have to understand too, with options, they're not the value and the way you make money isn't just off of the stock going up, right? You can make money also off implied volatility. So if a stock is moving really slow, implied volatility is really low, you pay less for the option because, again, you're buying theoretical value. You're not buying the value of where the stock's trading at. And I'm getting technical, but I'm trying to put this in the best terms as I can. You're buying time value on those options as well. Implied volatility is a part of that equation. Implied volatility, in simple forms, is what the movement that you expect in the future from that stock. How much it's going to move up or down in the future. If the stock is less volatile right now, let's say it's not moving a lot, and you buy it, then the stock price that you want to purchase at, your strike price, is going to be closer to where it's at now, or you're going to pay less for that option because the chances of it hitting the price that you choose are less, right? It's kind of like gambling. But let's say you buy Tesla, it's not moving a lot, but then all of a sudden news comes out a month later that, Biden's doing all this stuff with the EV vehicles. Now people are anticipating the Tesla stock to go up. They're going to go buy more call options. The demand for those options go up. Implied volatility goes up. The premiums for those options contracts that he purchased go way up. And he can actually make money not just off the gain of the shares, but also on the added time value on the contract as well. The extrinsic value increasing. So you have intrinsic and extrinsic value. Intrinsic is how far in the money the option is. Extrinsic value is basically the time value. Again, it's explaining this to people when I'm not seeing them and they're not asking questions, but Options make money a lot faster than a regular stock share would be. So you have to take that into consideration too, and that's what even makes Paul Pelosi's trades more cringeworthy, that he's doing it with options. Again, I love options. I do it a lot. I'm very knowledgeable about them. I'm opposed to anyone trading options. I'm not saying what he did is a bad investment. Oh, can you hear me? Hello? Damn. I don't know why it's silent. Hold on. Went silent on Podbean. Let me refresh this. Can you hear me, Eric? So, but yeah, I mean, that's just, now I don't even know if I'm connected. But that's kind of how that works. Yeah, sorry guys on Facebook, my Podbeam where I do the podcast is having some technical difficulties, but that's what makes the Pelosi trades more, again, just cringeworthy. Now I'm having problems here. But what I'm going to do is we're going to wrap that up, and we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow. And we're going to go into more detail on this. And just be ready, because, again, it's not just the right or the left that's doing this. It's not at all. This is a bipartisan problem. And I don't like it. I think that if we're going to allow our elected officials to trade in the stock market, they should only be limited to index ETFs or mutual funds. Why? And it has to be an American ETF or index ETF at that index, sorry. Like the S&P 500 or the Dow. Why? Because then they don't control the stocks that are in their investments. They're not making legislation based off of what's going to benefit Apple or Google. And you're going to take a lot of the lobbying stuff. You're going to have, you're still going to have lobbying, but they're only going to worry about what's going to help the market as a whole and not just their own specific investments. So if we're going to let them trade this, make them trade in American indexes. Not Asian, not international funds or anything like that. It has to be the indexes. The SPY or the Qs, which is the NASDAQ, or the Dow. And I think that would solve a lot of it. Or just don't let them trade at all. So, again, we're going to close that out there. Go check out thefederalreport.com. Go subscribe. And we'll be back on tomorrow. And see you guys later. Thanks.